Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to quickly talk about GOG, and in particular the financial pressures and struggles that they apparently have been going through lately. And overall, if you don't know what GOG is, we've talked about it before, but it is a game storefront, pretty much like Steam or Epic Game Store, and overall, they try to be pretty pro-consumer, and one of the biggest things they brag about doing is the whole no DRM. So if you buy a game on Steam, the DRM is Steam. You have to have Steam to play the game. Same for the Epic Game Store, same for Origin, Uplay, any of these game stores, and GOG was unique in that if you buy a game on GOG, you can just download the game and you can play it, and you don't have to worry about having GOG ever again. And they had this GOG Galaxy thing, which was pretty much a launcher like Steam, but you still didn't need that in order to play your games that you bought off GOG. They were still DRM free. But apparently the reason we're talking about this today is because there's been a couple things in the news that have been kind of highlighting that they are not doing so well. And the first thing is that apparently GOG quietly laid off at least a dozen staff, and when talking to the people that got laid off, Kotaku said that a lot of them were talking about how there were a ton of financial struggles and that GOG was not doing very well. And in particular, some of the things that they said was Gwent, because Gwent is the card game made by CD Projekt Red, and CD Projekt, they own GOG. So Gwent was an exclusive for GOG, and they were going to have Thronebreaker, which was the single-player version of Gwent, exclusive to GOG, and it did not do well at all. So they quickly put it on Steam. Gwent still isn't on Steam, even though I think that would help Gwent out a lot. But overall, they're owned by the same people, but that was a big struggle. And when Kotaku tried to talk to some spokespeople at GOG, they said, oh no, it's kind of, we're just restructuring some things. There's currently 20 open positions, and we're overall not really, downsizing or anything like that. But it's kind of a little unrealistic when all of the people that have been fired have been said that they were fired because of financial reasons, and that the studio and the company was almost going to red because they've had to just keep cutting down, and they've been making less and less money, especially with the way that there's more competitors with the Epic Game Store and stuff like that. And another piece of news that came out that kind of just confirms all of this is the fact that they are concluding the Fair Price package program, which they announced today. And pretty much, long story short, that just was a way where, because of the fact that there are different pricings in different countries, it was, if you bought something that was overall like more expensive where you are than in another country, they would refund some of that money to your wallet. So it wouldn't make the thing overall cheaper, you'd still have to pay for it, but GOG would put like a credit in your account for the difference. And they said normally it was around 12% of the game price, and it just came out of their own pocket. And they said in some prices, or in some cases, the number can reach as high as 37%, which is crazy. I mean, it's an amazingly awesome thing for GOG to do. But they said they're going to have to no longer be able to do that. And they are giving people a warning. You have until the end of March, so anybody that wants to take advantage of this can. But it does kind of show that they're not making as much money as they were, or they are needing to make now. And a lot of people tried to ring this in with people that have been, not liking the Epic Game Store. And they're like, well, see, if you don't want the competition, if you don't like all of this Epic Game Store stuff, if you don't like all of the stuff Steam is doing, well, then why aren't you supporting GOG, Because overall, I mean, and I get where they're coming from, because a lot of people have complaints with Steam or with the Epic Game Store or the Uplay or Origin Store, anything like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to use the GOG client, because personally, to me, like I've said before, I like the Steam client. I have been super invested into it, and I think Steam offers so many things that other storefronts don't. I mean, the workshop, we've all of the things that Steam has, other things don't. And even though like DRM free is really nice, it's not that important to me, especially when there are a lot of problems with GOG in particular. I mean, you have some games like No Man's Sky, when there are a bunch of updates for it, especially like the bigger multiplayer ones that have been coming out recently, some of the updates just did not have multiplayer. Like for No Man's Sky, I know it did not have multiplayer. I don't know if they've changed or anything, but at the beginning it didn't, because the multiplayer utilized Steam's like software and kind of systems that allow multiplayer. So Steam has all these things in place for developers to make really good working multiplayer and having anti-cheat and stuff like that. And they offer all of these things that a lot of people use. So when you put a game on GOG, because it doesn't have Steam's DRM, you can't have two different multiplayer versions of the game. I mean, you could, it would just be so much harder. I mean, and on top of that, I heard people talking on Reddit that it was even so bad where older games like some of the the Knights of the Old Republic, the Star Wars games, those weren't getting updated as much as they were on other platforms, which is insane. So, I mean, overall, GOG has its problems, and a lot of the problems for me make me not want to use GOG at all. The only extent I have used it was when I wanted to play Gwent, because it was a GOG exclusive. And I think there are some people that do like GOG and like the DRM free and everything like that, but for me, it's not worth it, especially when I like having all my things in one place, which is Steam. And on top of that, GOG does not have the amount of games or anything, because a lot of developers and companies don't want to have to deal with DRM free. I mean, we see them being so strict with like the de novo anti-cracking thing that every developer or publisher tries to put in their games to stop piracy. So they're really not going to be on board with putting their game on a storefront that is DRM free. But overall, I don't really know if there's necessarily a point to this besides letting you guys know, if you care about GOG, especially the fair price package, make sure to take advantage of that before the end of March if that is something you're interested in. But I think a lot of people are blaming consumers on the fact that GOG isn't doing well. They're like, well, you have all these complaints with the Steam store and the Epic Games Store, go use GOG. But GOG has its problems. It has way more problems than I have with Steam, or even to an extent, I mean, it would be debatable with the Epic Games Store. I have plenty of problems with the Epic Games Store, most of which just come from the super anti-consumer practices, not necessarily anything with the client besides, I mean, the client's not good, but we've already talked about that before. But overall, you can't, just because GOG tried to do something really great, and it still is trying to do it, and it still will probably be decently successful. I think it'll always be a niche thing. But having DRM free is important to some people. But for me, it's not, and especially all of the negatives that the storefront has isn't worth it for me to completely switch over on Steam, especially when all the games aren't on GOG, and I would still have to end up using Steam anyways, so I might as well just use Steam for as much as I can. But overall, that's just my opinion. If you guys have used GOG or you use a lot GOG, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts about all this is, and if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. New videos come out every couple days or so, and like always, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.